Hey everyone, welcome to this, I suppose, third recording, and probably the final recording associated with the Microsoft Defender Masterclass 1 event that took place on 30th of January 2021. So in this final recording, I'm just going to take you through what we did with the Power Platform Integration Lab. So it could take you through that step by step, all the way through from, well, starting from creating the demo tenant through to creating the adaptive card and be able to test that on alerts in Defender for Endpoint to perform actions via Teams against alerts in Defender for Endpoint. Before I go into that, just a quick reminder, as always, to register for our events, head over to the aka.ms/Defender Masterclass-reg. So from there you can access, if there's no live registration page for any of the upcoming events, you can access the on-demand content for any of the events that just finished, or the most recent event. -repo for access to all of our lab documentation, any information about upcoming events and links to recordings, etc. Essentially everything. I'll put everything that I can on the repo for you guys to access at any time. And then the feedback form is always available. Great for just a way to interact with myself, so I can ensure that any future events contain content that you're interested in. And thank you for everyone that attends these events and watches these videos as well. I hope they're helpful. So in this video, I'm going to walk through the Power Platform integration with Defender for Endpoint. Essentially, the best thing about the Power Platform is that it adds value, or almost adds this automation or application development layer that's low code to your Azure M365 Dynamics resources that you own and have, and enables you to leverage connectors or the Dataverse, or depending on what you're trying to achieve. So you can create really cool Canvas or Power Apps, Power BI dashboards, but in this instance we're going to leverage Power Automate and Flow to essentially create some automation when a Defender for Endpoint new alert arrives. That's going to trigger some automation to send some messages to Teams, but also allow you to take action on those messages without actually having to go into the Defender for Endpoint portal. So yeah, that could be quite useful and interesting. So let me get started. So first things first, let me just move the slides out of the way. If you wanted to head over to our repo, from here you can access the Getting Started lab, which I'll walk through now, which is basically how you're able to spin up a lab to do this demo, and then also the integration lab as well. I'm just going to walk through the steps in this video for that. So first things first is to head over to CDX. So I've gone here previously, but how I used to get here is just demos.microsoft.com is the old URL, which actually points to cdx.transform.microsoft.com. And from here you need to log in with your partner credentials. Now, if you have any issues accessing these labs or these demos, if you're a Microsoft partner, then you should have access to these, especially if you have a competency with Microsoft. So if you do have any issues, check out the Labs Getting Started document, and at the bottom there we've added in some frequently asked questions, so hopefully that should point you to a solution to your problem. If not, speak to your alliance manager internal within your partner, and they should be able to make sure you get access to this area. So from in here we want to go to My Environments and we want to create a new tenant. I'm just going to do that now. I'm just going to pick Europe as my location, but feel free to try the location that's closest to you. We do find that not all locations have the same different content packs available, and some tend to also, I suppose, throttle the creation of tenants, particularly the Defender for Endpoint tenant that we want, particularly North America. I see this throttling take place, so Europe tends to be pretty successful. So for the purpose of this lab, this is the tenant we want to create. It's the demo content with Defender for Endpoint, so that means we have a tenant with users already in there and also some alerts that are baked in as well. So I'm just going to click Create Tenant. I'm just going to pause the recording and come back when this is finished. Okay, welcome back. So the tenant has now been created, so here's my details. So what I'll do is I'll be deleting this tenant straight after this video, so that's why I'm able to show you these credentials here. So I'm just going to take a copy of these so I can use them. I'm going to type them out. Okay, so now I've got a tenant and credentials fired up. I can now open an in private window, and first of all I'm going to go to flow.microsoft.com and sign in. So just going to copy and paste the creds and the passwords. Okay, so I'm just signed into Flow. So from here I want to go to My Flows. I'm going to create a new flow, and it's going to be an automated cloud flow. We'll give it a name, so Defender new alert flow. And the trigger, we want it to be from Defender. So essentially we're going to use this trigger. Unfortunately it's still using the old ATP name, but this is fine. So essentially this is a trigger for whenever a new alert arrives in Defender for Endpoint. So I'm going to create it on that. From here now I need to sign in. So I'll just sign in with the global admin credentials and accept the schema permissions that this connector uses by default, which pretty much shows you the full range of, I suppose, abilities of this connector. Click accept there. And that's it, that's got us started. So essentially this flow will now trigger every time a new alert arrives in Defender for Endpoint. But we need to first of all gather some information, so we need to gather the alert ID for later usage. So alert, so get single alert. And from here we also want, it'll prompt us, because it's a premium connector, we can start a trial in this new tenant. So get single alert, and we want the alert ID, and save, and then we want to create a new step, and we want the machine, so Defender again, machine. Get single machine here, and ID of the machine is machine alert machine ID. Okay, just making sure I haven't gone off piste at all. So once we got that information, we also want to send an adaptive card to a Teams user. Okay, so post an adaptive card to Teams user and wait for a response. So that's the one we want. And in terms of the recipient, I'll be using my admin account for ease of use. So I just need to only manage one login. And okay, I was able to get that. Okay, and then in the message, this is where we want to put in essentially the JSON of our adaptive card. So we've pre-made this for you, so you don't have to generate it yourself. So if we went back to the repo, I've got the adaptive card JSON here, and essentially we can take all of this and copy it, and in our message we can paste it in here. So that saves a bit of time really. There is an adaptive card designer that we make available. I always forget the URL. If you this into your search bar, we do have the adaptive card designer here, and what you can do here is sort of have a play around and design your own adaptive cards. So if I basically put in the JSON here, this is what the card is going to look like, and so you can sort of get a feel for what it is. And if you're looking to build or make some changes to this adaptive card, then this is where essentially you can come in here, this studio, and start to build it out. Anyway, in the interest of time, this is the adaptive card, and that's what it'll look like in Teams when we post it. But there's a few changes we need to make that are specific to this, I suppose, this card that we want to create in this tenant. So what we want to do is update this text block that sort of lands in here really, to give a bit more information about the alert. So we can start with maybe the alert ID, and then we can start pushing some variables in here. Be careful because the cursor tends to move around a bit. So alert ID there, and then see what happens is it goes all the way to the top. I need to bring it back down to here. And let's see, severity, and then we can, I suppose, find severity, alert severity, and get the column. And then let's say description, and then we want description, and then finally let's pull in the machine name. Okay, machine computer name. Okay, so that gives us some useful information in terms of the body of the adaptive card that will arrive. And finally, we just need to update the UPNs of the users that we're going to provide options to assign this alert to. So because this is an M365 demo tenant, I know that these users exist because they're pretty much part of the standard user set of the data you get with these tenants. However, because each demo tenant you create will have a unique UPN, we've left this bit blank to allow you to populate it with yours. So I'm just going to populate it with my UPN. Paste that over here. Okie dokie, so that's added in there. And we also need to update the detail URL. So in here, when we click on the view details button for that alert, we want to make sure that it lands at the right location of that alert. So in here we want to remove this and add in the alert ID here. Okay, so that's going to take us then directly to that URL of that alert. And at this stage, that's essentially it. We just want to save this and make sure it's working. Save. However, in order to test it, I need to essentially generate a new alert. So I'm going to need to do that manually. So if I go to the Defender portal, hopefully I need to put in my credentials. No, good. And because it's a demo tenant and we just need to generate a quick alert to test our flow, I don't really want to onboard a machine or go for any of the simulation labs to generate a new alert. So we can do that quite quickly by creating a custom detection rule using the advanced hunting capabilities. So in the documentation for the lab, I've created a very quick way of doing this. We can just, I know there is some information already in this tenant, and you can just sort of query that, and create I suppose a detection rule, which you know will trigger an alert because you know that data exists from this query. So for example, in here I know there are PowerShell scripts that have been run to generate some of the test alerts. So I know it's there. So if I ran this query here, I get a bunch of results. Yeah, but then I want to just break that down. So what I can do is just say, let's just get the top one by action type, and that'll just restrict it down to one result. So I can see it's affected that device. So remember that in your heads. Well, I don't need to, but just remember that. And I'm going to create a detection rule based on this that I found. A bit slow. Okay, that's fine, it's better. So detection name, flow test, frequency, we don't want it just every 24 hours is fine. Alert title, so this is what we'll see in our demo tenant alert. So flow test alert. I can give it a medium severity and execution. It doesn't really matter too much, but in this descriptions of this, what we'll see in our adaptive card. So flow test alert. Detection. And next, create. So now we've created that custom detection, we just want to run it. So in our settings and custom detections, we can see it here, and it does actually should run first time. So I clicked on it too many times there. So what I need to do is just wait for that run status to, I suppose, complete, and then we should have a new alert, and then we can check on our flow. So I'm just going to come back when that is done. Okay, so that's now complete. So if I go to my alerts window, I should see a new alert. So flow test alert here. Okay, so now if I go back to flow, we'll see that this is in status of running. So I now need to flip over to Teams. So essentially that adaptive card is waiting for me to do something. Okay, if I go into chat, there you go. So I've got this adaptive card here, so we can see the alert ID, severity, the description, so flow test alert, and the machine affected. Okay, so what I want to do now is just simulate. This won't actually assign the alert to somebody because we haven't written the or haven't updated the flow to include that action yet. But what I want to do is I want to just do this and then grab some of the information to help me with the next stage. It's almost to allow me to create a condition element to the flow to basically update this alert based on some of the buttons I click here, and it'll make sense in a second. So I'm just going to go back into here. So I've just done that action. So if I go into this run of the flow, I can see some of the outputs here. So the key bit is this submit action ID, which is what I'm going to use to create some conditions. So I'm going to create some conditions based on the contents of submit action ID to determine how I update this alert. So yeah, this is going to vary based on what we select in that adaptive card. So it's either going to be assign alert or it's going to be isolate machine. So in order to do that, we need to create a new step in the flow to parse a JSON. But to do that, we also need to grab a bit of information. We essentially need to grab this output here, this body, all of that. Not essential because we have got a sample in the document that you can grab if you want to. Here's one I just did earlier, and it doesn't need to be from this specific one. It can be from any run. It can be from the one in the document. It's just really used to grab these elements so we can actually use them in the flow as part of the dynamic content when we build out our flow. And it'll make sense in a second. So if I go back and I go back into editing this flow and create a new step, we want to pass JSON here, and content, grab this from the essentially this links to the body of our post adaptive card here, bit here, so paste that in here, so that needs to match there. And then for the element here, we need to generate from sample, and this is where we paste in this output that we grabbed from our previous run here, and that will then allow us then to use some of these variables in the next steps in our flow. So once that is done, we can then move on to saving that, and I suppose we could also do a test at this point to view the contents of that. So if I run a test here with a recently used one, and the best thing now, we don't need to generate a new alert. We can just simply use this existing previous trigger to be able to continuously test our adaptive card based on that same alert. So flow is running. We've got a new here. Now we just want to check the output for isolate machine. So that will help us. So that will now complete. Okay, looks like I might have made a small error in here. I think I might have added like a space or something somewhere. Let me just hold on a second. Okay, so I pasted the content bit in the wrong place, so I was rushing slightly. Let me just go back and edit this JSON bit here, so it shouldn't be like that at all. Just remove it, should actually be in the expression here. Oops. Okay, let's just grab that. Yeah. Okay. And there you go, that's better. It's got the body in there. Okay, if we save that and then run the same test again. Okay, go into our teams and then hit isolate machine, back into our run history, so that completes okay, and you'll be able to see here, submit action ID, isolate machine. So therefore, yeah, we've got our two different, I suppose, values of our isolate machine. So now we can go and start building that sort of condition flow. So okay, so now that we have that information, we go back and edit our flow. And also for those that are watching and find this is a little bit disjointed and I seem a bit distracted, I do apologise. I'm sort of recording this video throughout my normal working day, so it's not all being done in one consistent chunk. I'm just sort of bouncing back and forth to this recording, so trying to keep it as sort of consistent as possible. But anyway, so next we're going to create the condition. So this actually allows the flow to branch away based on which buttons we pick. So condition, and here now we need to set a variable to determine what button was pressed. So first of all, we need to add the submit action ID, which is what we see in this JSON here, don't we? Submit action ID here. So this is what we'll base this decision on. So we need to pull it from dynamic content here, and it is equal to, and the first one, and this is, we type this, isolate machine is the first one we'll deal with. So if you hit the isolate machine button, it's going to drop into this condition in here, and then we need to use the Defender for Endpoint connector to isolate that machine. And the way we do that is, I believe there's an isolate machine action built in here, and we're going to need to pass it the machine ID, which we should have. Machine ID, and we can add a comment here. Machine isolated by, and we can add the user principal name, UPN, by IPN. Okay, so that's the machine isolation bit done. We also need to create a new condition here based on, so if we don't do isolate machine, then we need to create a condition here for doing it, for assigning the alert. So same one, we need to submit action ID is equal to assign alert, I believe would be the content. And then if that's yes, we need to assign the alert to the user. So for this one, we need to do Defender and then update alert is the correct one, because we're basically updating the, some values within that alert. Come on, a bit slow. Update alert, and then ID of the alert, we should have that from our alert ID, and assigned to is essentially, we want to grab it from that JSON file, and I believe it is alert assign is the contents within. I don't know if we'll be able to ping it from this rock because we selected isolate in this one, but oh no, there it is, alert assigned there, properties. Just close teams. And that's it, we're done. We can hit save, and we can confirm some of these actions. So let's save that. And we can do a test based on previously triggered data. So we'll do this one. So we'll test assigning the alert first of all. So it's going to trigger, and we can flip over to teams. And new one's just landed. We can assign it. So let's assign it to Adele. Hit assign alert, and if we have a look at the details of this alert, we should see it assigned to Adele. And yep, we can see, so this specific alert has now been assigned to Adele. And next one we want to do is isolate the machine. So if I just jump over to this device, so you can see here at the moment we could isolate it if we want to. So if we just do test, so hit isolate machine, refresh. You can see here now that this device is isolated, and we can look in our action center and we can see that it's been isolated by admin. And that's it. That completes this lab. Thank you for watching. Look out for more on this channel and more events. Let me just go back to the slides. So next event, our Masterclass 2 is on 17th of March. Register here, aka.ms/defendermasterclass-reg, and always check the repo for updates. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.